Donald Trump rings the bell. New York's mayor meets with the border czar. And the man who just ran Social Security tells us tonight what will happen with your checks. That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
Analysis thus far in an investigation that is ongoing has not revealed any national security or malicious intent or criminal activity. But, Jackie, I would remind you, we're at the beginning here, not the end. There's a lot more work to be done.
No national security threat, no foreign nexus, but also no answers. That from the White House today about those unknown drones flying in parts of the East Coast. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. But first tonight, from The Hill, the corner of Wall and Broad receiving a visit today from Time Magazine's Person of the Year. President-elect Donald Trump ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. A who's who in the business world showing up to take in the spectacle. Trump vowing to put a presidential focus on artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, and lower corporate taxes for companies who invest stateside.
You pay 21 if you don't build here, and meaning your product or whatever it is you're building. And if you do, we're going to try getting it down to 15%. But you have to build your product, make your product in the USA.
We begin here tonight, here on The Hill, with Kevin O'Leary. You know him as Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank fame, chairman of O'Leary Ventures, friend of the show. Hello, Kevin. Good to see you as always.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Of course. So I saw a lot of euphoria today there, right, at the stock market, and you can understand why. Stocks have been up since Donald Trump won the election. Cryptocurrency has been ripping. Oil is at or below $70 a barrel. There's talk of lowering taxes, right? Who doesn't love those sorts of things? But I'm also looking at inflation at 2.7%, wholesale prices rising, eggs up 8%, transportation up 7%. And I just wonder, Kevin, if we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here and if the real worry for Donald Trump still is inflation.
Could be. Economy is very, very strong. That's what you saw. The print was hot. The print was hot today. But, you know, this deregulation and this new idea of 15% if you invest $1 billion in America, I mean, I'm licking my chops on that one. That's pretty interesting. I mean, think about it. You know, if you talk about developing something like an AI data center or any real estate development, it's way over $1 billion. At 15%, that's incredibly competitive. And so I think there'll be a fair amount of interest in figuring that out and understanding the policy on it, because policy matters. But, you know, the euphoria in the market and Trump showing up at the New York Stock Exchange and all the CEOs, $1 trillion worth of market cap. I mean, they're celebrating a pro-business, pro-growth environment. What's wrong with that?
No, I've just there's really nothing wrong with it. You know, and we'll see how sort of the market and everything plays out. I just wonder with, you know, inflation still showing up and still being there, whether or not that's eventually the ultimate worry for Donald Trump. You mentioned data centers. You just had an announcement of your own of putting together an off-the-grid natural gas and geothermal power infrastructure to build the largest AI data center in the world. And Donald Trump was sort of talking about AI earlier today at the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Here's what he said, and I'll get your reaction on the other side.
We're going to be ahead of AI. We're going to be way ahead of AI, and we've got to produce tremendous amounts of electricity. You know that it's unbelievable when you think that we need more than twice what we already have. If you think that's pretty for a specific industry, but we'll be able to do it.
So you just talked about the announcement that Trump made yesterday about the $1 billion and permitting and fast-tracking that. The data center, though, Kevin, that you're talking about is in Canada. It's not in the United States. And so I wonder what that says about where the U.S. is right now on that crucial front, data and AI.
Well, there's only 2 states that can bring a gigawatt of power. The problem is a gigawatt of power, which is what the hyperscalers want. You know, the Teslas, the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts. That's 1 million homes worth of light a night. So we can't put that on the grid in America anymore. You got to find gas or nuclear power. Nuclear power is 15 years. So isn't that an issue, though, right? Because we do want to be the leader in this. Yeah, that's right. We're going to have to partner up with Alberta. They've got the most gas in North America. So this woman, Danielle Smith, who's very friendly with Trump, he knows who she is. She's the Premier of Alberta. She's got 200 trillion square feet of natural gas that can be converted into electricity at the lowest cost in North America. And so when I met her, I said, yes, ma'am, I'll spend a ton of money, $70 billion, to build it out, and we'll be... Listen, I think that the relationship between Canada and the United States has been good forever. And I think the fun he's having with Trudeau is he doesn't respect him. But
yeah, so what do you think's going on with Trudeau and Trump right now, right? Because Trump's doing a little bit of trolling, a little bit of tariff threats. What do you think's happening there?
He's just having fun with him. He doesn't like him because Trudeau bashed him in his first mandate, and Trudeau's on his way out. Canadians hate him. He'll be gone soon. That's okay. But Danielle Smith, who is probably the energy woman on earth right now, is the lowest cost energy in oil. Trump wants to light up XL pipeline again. She's the queen bee on that one. And she's got the most low cost energy in America just north of the border. So listen, I want to build data centers in West Virginia and North Dakota, but right now she's my special friend. I'm going to find $70 billion, and I think Trump's going to like my project.
All right. Let me leave you with this, because you're obviously a proponent of Bitcoin. And there was a proposal in the Texas state legislature today that basically said, you know what, you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin, but the state of Texas would then have to hold on to it for 5 years. And Donald Trump keeps talking about this strategic Bitcoin reserve. We heard him talk about it today. What do you think the model is here?
The model is to figure out the regulatory environment, to change the leadership of the SEC, which he's done, and the CFTC, the Commodities Exchange, he's going to do that too. America needs to lead in digital currency, and it has to do this because the world understands this is a more efficient way of transferring capital, and Bitcoin is here to stay. It's not going away. So what Trump really has to do, and I think there's a fair amount of optimism, is get the regulatory environment in sync with what the interests of the institutional capital are and sovereign wealth. So all this hype around Texas, it doesn't matter. What matters is, if I want to buy Bitcoin and I'm a pension plan in New York or in California or in Texas or in Florida, and I want to put 3% in it, let me do it legally under the jurisdiction of the SEC or the CFTC. Trump will deliver that within 6 months of his mandate, and watch what happens. The asset class will go up. It's all about regulation. That's it. Gensler was negative, and he sued everybody in the Stone Age, but he's gone.
Kevin O'Leary, O'Leary Ventures Chairman, Shark Tank fame. Thank you, sir. It's always great to speak with you. Fascinating to hear from you. Thanks for being with us here on The Hill.
Thank you. Take care.
You got it. All right, joining me now here on The Hill, Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House Chief of Staff, NewsNation contributor, Ashley Davis, former George W. Bush White House official. Hello to you both. Hi. Nice to have you. Hello, Berman. Am I on to something there that there was a whole lot of euphoria today on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and I get it. He's the incoming president, but I'm also looking at when egg prices and car insurance costs are through the roof, the average person says, okay, yeah, lower my costs.
Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods, all right? Donald Trump has a plan for addressing part of that, which is the too few goods. That's the deregulatory agenda. That will be downward pressure on inflationary prices. But they haven't figured out yet how to solve the too much money problem. That building behind us is going to continue to spend $2 trillion that we don't have every single year, and that will continue to be inflationary. And that's the part I don't think Trump has got his hands around yet.
I'm digging it. You don't think he has his hands?
No, because Washington doesn't have their hands around it yet. He wants to spend money just like everybody else.
I'm digging into my phone here because I texted you both something. Harold Daggett, who is the head of the Longshoremen's Association.
Okay.
The Longshoremen's Association is threatening a strike on January 15th, 5 days before Inauguration Day. And Donald Trump just posted that he met with the head of the Longshoremen's Association. This could shut down the ports on the eastern seaboard. And basically said, you know what, we shouldn't have automation, which is what the Longshoremen's Association wants. And I'm sitting back going, wait a minute, this is the guy talking about crypto and AI, and now all of a sudden automation is bad. And I made this point to you last time, Ashley. Every single major labor union in this country at this point, I don't know why they wouldn't strike, because Democrats in this town are for labor, and now you got Donald Trump saying stuff like this.
He's for America first, and I think he's for the workers, is what he won on. And so I think he's trying. Listen, I think automation has to happen at some point. 100% we need to move with the times.
But he's not saying it there.
Of course, he's not. But what I'm saying is I think he's biding time to make sure that our workers are working. And I think that he feels, and if you read that comment, it's the workers, if they're not working and are replaced by automation, it's going to, and foreign
companies should be paying these workers.
Exactly. Then obviously the American families are going to be harmed for it. So I actually think this fits right into his populist message. Right or wrong, I mean, I feel that we have to have automation, but it's not going to help American families.
We've talked about how does Donald Trump change American politics. He got huge votes from the African-American community that no Republicans got. He's got huge votes from the Hispanic community that no Republicans had in the recent history. And he reached out to unions in a way that has not been done by Republicans. Now, the different kinds of unions. It's not the service workers. It's not the government workers. But the manufacturing workers, which I would include the longshoremen as, are sort of.
You don't think that's more service?
No, I don't. You drive a piece of machinery. You're unloading a truck. You're not. It's not like you're working at the Department of Education. Okay, it's a real job. It's a manufacturing type job. And I think Trump is sympathetic to them. So he's seeing rebuilding the Republican base.
And these are his people. I mean, this is definitely, right. But I also have, my biggest pause is always U.S. Steel, because if you look at this in regards to the stock, if this was taken over, if U.S. Steel was taken over, obviously it's much better
Joe Biden says he's going to block it.
Correct, but so does Donald Trump.
Right.
They both are.
Yep.
And so that to me is like, from a stockholder perspective, the people that would win over, them being taken over would be much better for the people that invest in the company than it is that the workers. But I actually think it's actually better for the union and the workers in the company if it was taken over in regards to their stock, right?
I think that's right. I think that's a debate that's going to take place. This idea that if it's not an American company, it's not American jobs. That's not right.
This is Dubai ports from 2005.
Exactly. I don't care who owns the airport. I want the airport to work. I don't care who owns the port. I want the port to work. I don't want Americans to work.
By the way, this is something to keep an eye on. We watched it in October as there was a strike for a few days. January 15th, they know the timing. We'll see what happens here. Thank you both. See you back in the show. Still to come. Here from the Hill, our Kelly Meyer with what the White House is telling her about those mysterious drones flying in the skies. Plus, the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the Senate will vote on Social Security changes. We are joined by Martin O'Malley, the former commissioner of the Social Security Administration, here in studio on what you can expect and how the healthcare industry now in the spotlight after the shooting in New York City. Why some members of Congress are saying, of course murder's bad, but how they are finishing that sentence out. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is the Center of Politics. The Hill's back in 4 minutes. NewsNation, the most popular story on thehill.com right now is this. Chuck Schumer says the Senate will vote on Social Security changes. Now, the bill, with a price tag of some $190 billion over 10 years, would expand benefits for some who worked in public service. It passed the House, by the way, with 327 votes, wide bipartisan support. And while bipartisanship is rare here in Washington, the reality is this. For all the talk of more benefits, Social Security will, at some point, be forced to stare down major changes. No one has had a better look at the program than Martin O'Malley, who just stepped down as the Social Security Administrator to run for the role of chairman of the Democratic National Committee. The former governor from Maryland, former presidential candidate, back here on the Hill. Thanks for being back with us.
Thank you, Blake.
You were here a few weeks ago. We didn't scare you off. So
no, not at all. I'm glad to talk.
So the trustees report basically lines out where all this goes. And in 10 years, give or take, the $100 that you get isn't going to be $100 for Social Security because we're running out of money. And it basically says you either have to raise taxes, you have to cut benefits, or there has to be a combination of both. And when you get ideas like this, it only adds to more benefits, more money, and doesn't solve the problem. What happens from here? Because we know where this is headed.
Yeah, let's unpack all of that.
Okay.
First of all, there is no reason that Social Security need go bankrupt or insolvent. In fact, it's not on a path for bankruptcy or insolvency in the way that you and I and people on the street would understand those terms.
It's just pennies on the dot.
It is
79 cents on the dollar.
It is true, though, that back in 1982, when the last congressional reforms were made. Famously, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill had a beer, and they created 75 years of fiscal health for Social Security. They knew the baby boomers were coming, and they knew that there would be this big demographic bulge. So they built up a surplus reserve. And it is true that that surplus reserve is being depleted sooner than they thought, but that's because of changes to the tax code that took more of the dollars out of the bracket that Social Security applies to and pushed it into the top 6% of earners. So bills on Capitol Hill by like John Larson in Congress or Senator Whitehouse actually don't call for cuts. They show how we can actually get wealthier people to start paying into Social Security again, because right now, like a nurse works all year, pays into it. Warren Buffett stops paying after the first 13 seconds after midnight.
Let me ask you a couple of ways. I'm 40. I'm married with kids in elementary school. Without changes, is Social Security there for me?
It is there, but if Congress doesn't act, which they always have before, by 2035, it was actually pushed off a year because of better than expected wage growth. And it is true that there would be an automatic 17% reduction in benefits.
So it's
unless
there,
Congress fixes it.
It's there, but again, pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, so let me tell you, last year we paid, it's a pay-as-you-go system, not a Ponzi scheme.
So Senator Ron Johnson basically says this is a legal Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's false. I mean, that's not true. That's not true.
But what about the concept, though, of you have money coming in to pay for money coming out, and it's just not stable, I guess is the argument.
Well, it's been stable. It's been stable for 89 years. If it's a Ponzi scheme, as Senator Johnson says, it's the longest running Ponzi scheme in world history. Look, this is what happened. Okay. Last year, Social Security, we the people, paid $1.37 trillion in benefits. We, the people who were working, paid $1.35 trillion into it. Mm-hmm. So the dollars that people pay into it are the dollars that are paid out, just like an insurance company pays, claims on premiums. And the other 0.2, that came from that built-up trust fund reserve, which because of income inequality is being depleted sooner than we thought it would in, 1982. I was in college and my friends were all saying it wouldn't be there for us, and now I get to apply next year.
So I don't want to be selfish. Forget about me and my generation for a second. Let's talk about my parents' generation, right? In full benefits, when you start at 67, you just saw everything under the hood.
Yeah.
Is it your belief that the age needs to be pushed out, or else, again, they're getting pennies on the dollar?
I would not recommend that. I don't think that's sound policy, and this is why. If you're a lawyer or a doctor, your longevity has increased over the years. But if you're somebody that works hard and outdoors, your longevity has not so greatly increased, which means that your benefit, this is what you have to look at in terms of the benefits. It's life expectancy after the age of retirement. On Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, the life expectancy for males is 42 years, same as it was in 1968. So people who work hard would in essence amount to a cut if you raised it to 70 because they've had fewer years, even though they paid in to reap benefits.
I guess you could say the cut is coming, though.
Not necessarily. Well, look, Donald Trump could break a lot of things, and if he wants to, with these weird doji guys, they could turn Social Security into a Bitcoin bank. But I don't think that would be good for the American people. 80% of Americans, even in a time of polarization, want Social Security to be made stronger. They don't want it to be turned into a Bitcoin bank.
I don't think those guys are going to do that, though.
Well, we'll see, won't we, Blake?
All right.
We'll see. They're going to break a lot of things, and the American people are going to cry out for the sort of economic security that they once took for granted in terms of Social Security, not to mention Medicare. Can I say one other thing?
Sure,
this is another fallacy. Social Security does not add to the national debt. Social Security is a pay-as-you-go program. So this malarkey about it contributing to the national debt, it does not.
Well, we got all these entitlement programs and
not Social Security, Blake.
Well,
it's offline. It doesn't contribute to the debt.
Right. There's lots of issues right now with $36 trillion in debt and climbing. That's going to be 50 something in a decade or so. When we also have to figure out what we're going to do with Social Security.
Sure,
we'll
but
leave
Social Security doesn't contribute to the debt.
We'll leave
it's
it
a
there.
pay-as-you-go program.
Martin O'Malley, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, still to come here on the Hill. Donald Trump, the aforementioned New York Stock Exchange earlier today, what he said during his Person of the Year interview in Time, plus the very latest on what the White House and Capitol Hill officials are reacting to and what they're saying about those things right there. Stay with us. Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. More reaction out of the Capitol on the drone sightings. Elon Musk breaks another record, and Time picks its Person of the Year. Our Kelly Meyer here with what's happening in the Capitol and more. Hello, Kelly.
Hey there, Blake. A lot happening across the country and here in Washington, and there was a lot of speculation on this over the last few days. We talked about Time Magazine naming Donald Trump Person of the Year for a second time. He previously won after winning the presidential election back in 2016. Here is Trump ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange this morning to celebrate his reinstated title. In his interview with Time, the president-elect said once he's back in the Oval Office, he'll use the military for mass deportations, pardon January 6 defendants on a case-by-case basis, and that he vehemently disagrees with giving U.S. weapons to Ukraine. The world's richest man is even richer. Elon Musk reportedly reaching a groundbreaking net worth of more than $400 billion. He is the first person in history to ever reach that number. For context, Musk is now worth more than Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates combined. The SpaceX and Tesla CEO saw his fortune increase by more than 69% since Trump won in November. Musk will also oversee the Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE. And those mystery drones flying over New Jersey at night are getting even more attention from lawmakers on Capitol Hill and over at the White House. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby saying earlier today there was no evidence the drones pose any kind of threat. Take a listen.
We have not been able to, and neither have state or local law enforcement authorities, corroborate any of the reported visual sightings. It appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned aircraft that are being operated lawfully.
Back on the Hill, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, along with other New York and New Jersey senators, now want a briefing from FBI, Homeland Security, and FAA on these sightings as soon as possible. And House Speaker Mike Johnson said today he is set to get a classified briefing on the recent drone sightings. The Pentagon denies any foreign entity is involved, and the FBI is saying they still have no answers and are asking residents to share any videos or photos they have as the agency continues their investigation. And that's what's happening on the Hill, Blake.
You know, I wonder if you had a governor who's a governor of a state in the Northeast where all this is happening, what they would say and what they sort of think what's going on.
Well, I think we might ask him. I think we should ask.
Kelly Meyer here in the Capitol. Thank you. Joining me now here on the Hill, Governor Chris Sununu from the great state of New Hampshire.
State of New Hampshire.
What do you think's going on in the skies? I mean, you're a governor. You get a lot of questions. The federal government is basically saying no answers here. What do you think's happening?
Well, first, your gut has to assume that it's some sort of distraction for how bad the New York Jets are for the state of New Jersey. But no, it's a serious thing, and I've gotten calls about potential drones in New Hampshire. I know other governors are fielding that because now pretty much everyone's looking at the sky and going, what's going on? So two things. Number one, you want to follow up on every one of them. You know, is it serious? Where's it coming from? You're not always going to know. I can tell you, not speaking to New Jersey, but what we have in New Hampshire, you look into it, you talk to the Department of Safety, they coordinate with their liaisons on the federal side and you see if you can pin it down. Unfortunately, this is not going to be the end of this, right? Drones they're cheap, they're easy to come by, they can be privately bought, they can be very intrusive and very scary, especially with, it's not just conspiracy theory stuff. I mean, what is it, who's doing it, and why? A lot of questions to be asked, but it's not the first and probably not the last time, unfortunately. So you got to stay vigilant on it.
All right. So you had an article in thehill.com today, and here was the headline. It said, Musk and Doge should ignore D.C. and look to the states. Here's what you wrote. You said, anyone who claims this can't be done simply doesn't want it to be done. Many of these naysayers occupy Congress, some even claiming to be fiscal conservatives. Tell me what you mean.
This efficiency thing is a great idea.
Okay.
People that are skeptical of Musk, I tell you, as a fellow engineer, first you want an engineer doing it. The fact that we just got the report that he's now worth $400 billion, he could care less about money and self-interest. He simply wants to challenge the system. Now, my argument is Washington's actually the last place that efficiency is finding government. States have already done it, right? So states all across the country have cut regulations, have found licensure reform, have cut agencies. So this isn't something new. Look to the states not in terms of the ideas, but how they achieved it through the legislative process.
So they have balanced budgets.
Balanced budget amendment is key. It's critical.
The states do this. Mm-hmm. The reality is, Governor, the thought of that here in Washington is a joke. It's not going to happen, right? And so
no, not right.
Right? Like
no, I think there's a path to doing it. I think you're right that to date, they've been afraid. The whole lot of them, Democrats and Republicans, are absolute cowards in Washington about doing the right thing. But what this election was about was they didn't vote for Trump just because of policy. They voted Trump because they wanted a disruptor. Right? They wanted an administration that said, we're going to block grant things back to the states because we don't trust Washington. We're going to move regulation back to states because you guys don't get anything done. So the opportunity to trim on the edges and cut a program here and there, that's all fine. But you have to get to a balanced budget. You need something structurally that keeps it for the long term. Otherwise, it's fleeting. And right now, there's 27 states. 27 states have a resolution to call a convention on a balanced budget amendment. 4 or 5 more. Now you're actually getting a threat, and Congress will be pushed.
They all lose their jobs here, right?
No. And I think that's a really good point. They think they'll lose their jobs. So when a governor cuts a budget, makes tough decisions, balances things, stays within their means, they're rewarded. We get reelected for making tough decisions.
Okay.
It's old school thinking that if you have to make a tough decision, you'll be penalized. The new mindset in America is we have to live by a balanced budget in our homes. You guys in Washington have to play by the same rules.
So there was the meeting with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy last week or recently here up on Capitol Hill. Congressman Tim Burchett, Republican Tennessee, came out of that meeting, gave a little POV. Here's what he said. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
The key to the whole thing is in that room. If Congress doesn't have the guts to do those things that they're talking real big about, it's just a waste of time.
Our friends Elon and Vivek can do a good job exposing it, but then we got to actually do our jobs.
Is that spot on there?
Spot freaking on. God bless those guys. Now, this is the other opportunity. Elon's not just going to find the ideas and present something. He's an outsider with political capital. When Elon Musk, if you're a congressman and that guy walks into your office, you're going to listen. You're going to not necessarily do exactly what he says, but you're going to have that congressman's attention. And all of America is looking. They can't do it in just a partisan way. They have to bring some Democrats along. You got to give a little to get a little. I'm not saying they're going to get the Social Security restructuring and reforms they want tomorrow, but bring AARP along with you. You know, the groups that would typically fight that, knowing that 8 years from now, if you have Social Security, your benefits go to 83% of what they are
we were just
today.
talking about it with the former administration.
That's right. You're losing money. Don't let that happen. Get AARP and folks to say, how do we structurally change this so we maintain the benefits? Same with Medicare. The interest rates. I mean, right now we pay about $1 trillion a year in interest. In just 10 years, that goes to $1.8 trillion. So you better take care of it now, or that perfect storm of financial crises in about 8 years is going to come crashing down. And then you're just reacting to the crisis, not providing a solution. Okay. People want it done. I think Congress will be rewarded if they have the guts to do it.
Governor Sununu of New Hampshire.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the Hill, what Elizabeth Warren, the senator, is saying about the healthcare industry after the CEO murder that took place in New York City. Why is there a comma but? And speaking of New York, the mayor there meeting with Trump's border czar. What happened today in the Big Apple? You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation.
NewsNation tonight. You call in a tip, you get the reward, right? Not so much for the McDonald's employee who led police to the accused CEO killer. The $60,000 reward comes with some strings attached. Banfield tonight on NewsNation.
Do you guys have any sights on Luigi Mangione? Just yell yes or no.
They're flickering up. They're saying no.
Wow, that was NewsNation's Alex Capriello and Ashley Banfield in a surreal television moment last night. The two were shouting questions during Ashley's show to prison inmates about the facility's newest inmate, Luigi Mangione, who is there at the correctional facility in Huntington, Pennsylvania. Mangione, of course, the 26-year-old who police believe is the gunman who shot the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, killing him. Our Laura Ingle joins us live with the very latest on where all this stands. Laura?
Hey, Blake, you know, that moment on Banfield last night has gone viral, as you can imagine, with over 10 million views currently on TikTok alone. Those inmates shouted back to NewsNation that Luigi Mangione's conditions are not good and that the food is terrible on the inside. And new tonight, we've got this. Just off the presses, the courts in Pennsylvania have put this out. We have a filing for Luigi Mangione to appear in court on December 30th for a writ of habeas corpus and petition for imposition of bail. Now, Mangione's defense attorney has said he doesn't believe that there is probable cause to arrest him on murder charges right now, and reminding everyone he's only being held on forgery and gun charges. But if a grand jury here in New York determines probable cause that the defense argument is out, which of course helps prosecutors get him here to this jurisdiction. Also new tonight, Blake, the AP is reporting that the NYPD chief of detectives telling NBC News that Luigi Mangione was never a client of United Healthcare. So that's interesting. And he may have targeted it because of its size and influence. The chief of detectives also revealing that investigators have now uncovered evidence that he had prior knowledge United Healthcare was holding its annual investor conference in New York City. We don't know what that evidence is. We are working to learn more about that and how Mangione reportedly dropped off the grid months before the murder. Remember, his mother reported him missing. Where was he? Who was he talking to, if anybody? So we're working on that. He remains jailed tonight in Pennsylvania, where, who knows, he may have another exclusive if we've got a team out there again tonight. We'll see.
Never know with live TV. Laura Ingle, thank you so much.
Thanks,
appreciate
Mike.
it. You got it. Full panel here with me now. Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff in the Trump administration. Scott Bolden, NewsNation political contributor. Ashley Davis, former official in the George W. Bush White House. And Brad Howard, Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all
smile.
in.
Look at that
Brad
smile.
Howard is smiling because he had his first NewsNation shout out on the streets of Washington. We're making Brad famous. Here's what caught my attention with this. We're starting to see some reaction from members in Congress. And here was the Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren saying violence is bad, but
violence is never the answer. This guy gets a trial who's allegedly killed the CEO of United Health. But you can only push people so far. And then they start to take matters into their own hands.
She has since walked that back, saying violence is never the answer, period. I should have been much clearer. There is never such a justification for murder. Bernie Sanders, quote, murder is murder and it is totally unacceptable. But I think the outpouring that we have seen indicates there's a lot of frustration and anger at a healthcare industry. Is the comma but here from these lawmakers?
That's the problem, is the comma but. There isn't. Either murder is murder. And as frustrating as insurance companies can be, I must tell you, taking a gun with a silencer and shooting someone in the back isn't going to do anything but make America angrier, if you will. It's not going to solve the insurance problem, whether you disagree with their coverage or not. And now it comes out that Mangione was not even a client of United Healthcare. So he's just angry at this insurance establishment and chose a big target.
But he's creating the conversation, which is, I think, what he was trying to do. I mean, obviously, murder's murder and it's horrible, but the
there's your butt. So you're budding
it.
too.
I know, but
I don't think you should be budding. Okay, I just don't, because this person is mentally ill, if you will.
No, of course. But
what about these lawmakers going down that path?
Well, I mean, look, I think there's got to be a universal condemnation of violence, and there's certainly hypocrisy on the right when they look at what Kyle Rittenhouse did, and, you know, they championed him years ago, and now they're being criticized of Democrats. I think we can all agree that violence is, in this form, is bad, and it is unjustified. And I can't think of anything worse than punishing a mother than her son going to jail. So it's a very selfish act, in my opinion, as well. You know, as we look at the healthcare debate out there, I think you're going into a Republican majority where, you know, there's still the ACA stuff is on the table. There's a lot of, you know, the drug supply and shortages and supply chain stuff. There's a lot of issues that we still got to address. And I think that's certainly this is going to linger as an issue for the next few years.
Former congressman would say
that they only listen to what comes after the but part of the statement. And listen, when you talk for a living, and a lot of us do, we do, right? You can say some stupid things. There's no question from time to time. Do it all the time. Exactly right. But when Bernie Sanders says this and Elizabeth Warren says this about the healthcare industry, it's sort of an insight as to where some of the people's minds are. Look, if Fetterman had said this and he said, "Oh, I misspoke," you'd buy that, right? Even if Chuck Schumer had said this, "Oh, I misspoke," you buy that. When Elizabeth Warren says it, you scratch your head and go, maybe that was her really being honest, and that's the mistake you make when you put that language after the
why
but.
not just talk about reforming health care insurance?
Yes, that's fine.
Why not talk about the challenges that families are having? Just say that. Okay. This shooting has nothing to do with reforming that industry.
All right. Meantime, also happening in New York today, the mayor there, Eric Adams, meeting with President-elect Trump's incoming border czar, Tom Homan. The Democratic mayor saying he believes the two found common ground.
We have the same desire to go after those who are committing violent acts, repeated violent acts among innocent New Yorkers and among migrants and asylum seekers.
The mayor also admitting the city has made mistakes in the past, but they will not continue in that direction. Brad Howard and his newfound fame was saying this nonstop on this show as a moderate Democrat. You said that Democrats had to figure out a way forward on this. And is Eric Adams Exhibit A?
Well, I think Eric Adams has ulterior motives here, knowing that he's under trial and the president's about to come in who's
You think that's what this is about?
He's itching to use the pardon. And number two, I mean, whatever it takes to get Democrats to focus on what's really issue here. People made fun of the people sending migrants up to New York and Chicago, but it worked, right? It drew the attention to it. They all of a sudden had to deal with the housing issue that all these border states have been listening to for a long time. And I have said for a long time, Democrats need to listen to the border state Democrats, the Ruben Gallegos, the Vicente Gonzalez's that are down there on the border dealing with this every day, because Americans do very much care about this issue, and we shouldn't dismiss it as xenophobic.
Border State Democrat Henry Cuellar, there's some things I might not agree about, dividing families like that, but there's a lot Tom Homan and I actually have agreed. That's what he told me a couple weeks ago.
In politics, there are no permanent friends or enemies. They're just permanent interests. And the mayor of New York and the Trump administration and his budget and his upcoming reelection and the New York residents frustrated with all of this, despite his pending indictments, they have found permanent interest and a way forward for the mayor to talk about this issue in a way that New Yorkers are feeling what they're seeing.
You got Mulvaney nodding along with you.
Well, maybe honesty works.
Yeah.
I mean, look, maybe being honest with voters, we have to do something about this, transcends politics. We'll find out.
But I do think this election gave people like Eric Adams and a lot of Democrats permission to go back to the middle on the border issue.
We'll go back to the Tom Suozzi special election.
Yes.
Tom Suozzi ran.
In New York.
Even AOC allowed him to be that type of Democrat after that election.
But what he talked about today also were the criminals.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was really focused on the criminals, which I think everyone in this country can believe in.
Hard to disagree with
that. If Trump, whatever the mass deportation, we're actually going to get rid of 1 million people that have broken the law. But I really feel.
But any Democrat that doesn't start any conversation on immigration with secure the border, period, is making a mistake.
All right.
It's interesting to see what we should be watching.
Last word here.
2 seconds. It's interesting. Will the Democrats, the moderate ones, start to move further right? Even the less moderate ones move further right on this deportation issue and some of the other issues on the inflation and so forth and so on. That's what I'm going to be watching because remember, the Republicans hold all three
I don't think
houses.
I'm going to give you 2 seconds. There's a deal to be made here. There's a deal for border security for the Dreamers. Because Donald Trump wants to have that conversation.
All right, leave it there. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the Hill. Our tech leaders shifting to the right after Trump's win. Did you hear what Mark Zuckerberg did? And by the way, Jeff Bezos following him up? Leland Vitter, other side of the break.
Remarkable women from across the country. 125 trailblazers will be honored with a chance to win $25,000 for the nonprofit of their choice. Nominations open through December 20th. Go to newsnationnow.com to enter a remarkable woman today.
Great with crypto because we don't want China or anybody else, and not just China, but others are embracing it, and we want to be the head. We're going to be ahead of AI. We're going to be way ahead of AI.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. That, of course, President-elect Donald Trump this morning at the New York Stock Exchange, where he rang the opening bell, promising big things in the next administration for cryptocurrency and AI. Now, crypto, Bitcoin, up 44% since the election. The industry played a big role in the 2024 race. 3 pro-crypto super PACs gave a total of $133 million in the election. Those funds went to both Republicans and Democrats, but the majority went to Republicans. Now, here's what we want to note. It follows a shift to the right in areas and locations and cities that have typically gone blue. Now, the tech strongholds, for example, Silicon Valley, Austin, Texas, which is a new up-and-coming one. New York City, always finance with a lot of tech and venture there. And Miami, a new one for tech and venture. They have all shifted to the right. So let me just sort of explain this here. In 2020, Donald Trump, for example, in Silicon Valley, there was a shift to the right by 7 points. And you can see there, Austin, New York City, Miami-Dade, how there were big movements to the right. In the 2016 election, if you go from 2016 all the way to 2024, again, big movements to the right. Now, Donald Trump didn't win Silicon Valley. He didn't win New York City. He didn't win Austin, Texas. He did win in Miami-Dade, but it just goes to show in those areas, movement to the right. And you saw Trump talking about it today. Leland Vitter, host of On Balance, joins me live here in the last, 2 minutes with each other here. It's a fascinating dynamic because this isn't like the chamber.
I thought you were trying to set me up.
No.
Because
chamber. It's not like the Chamber of Commerce Republican Party anymore. You've got this different dynamic to where you heard Donald Trump talking about this on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange today.
Well, look, it's not anybody's Republican Party anymore other than Donald Trump.
Party of Trump?
It's Donald Trump's Republican Party. That was made very clear in this election. I think what you are picking up on is the number one rule in Washington, which is follow the money.
And that's where some of it, or a lot of it, I think that industry spent more in this election than any other. By the way, speaking of money, Mark Zuckerberg donating now $1 million to Donald Trump's inauguration. Jeff Bezos, too, the Wall Street Journal reporting, doing the same. These are the wealthiest men.
Elon Musk insurance?
Yeah, is that what this is? Do they take Elon Musk insurance at the inaugural?
I'm not sure $1 million buys you that.
No. It's chump change, but they just saw what happened. They saw those numbers. Mm-hmm. They saw Elon and Peter Thiel and Joe Lonsdale, the all-in, et cetera, right? Now they're trying to get in, too.
They're trying to get in, or at least they're trying to buy some insurance that they are not on the outside and targeted, because there's no way to ingratiate yourself to Donald Trump, like A, saying nice things on TV about him, or B, giving him money. Those are the two ways you get in good with Donald Trump. What I think is interesting is Scott Bolden on earlier made a point. There's no such thing as